Hi, my name is Deborah R. Richardson of Deborah R. Richardson LLC, and I work with you to help you clean up your vendor data, clean up your vendor processes so that you can pay the right vendor. Now, this week's Vendor Master File tip of the week is how RPA can help deter occupational fraud. And I will tell you, I came up with this because my last two podcast episodes were about occupational fraud. And if you didn't know, my podcasts are also on this YouTube channel. They're in a separate playlist, but I have 192 of them. So knock yourself out. So let's talk about RPA and how it can help deter occupational fraud. Now, the first thing everyone's going to say is, what the heck is RPA? And if you didn't know, it is robotics process automation. And it really is rules-based automation. So anything that you can set a rule for, you can set this digital bot to do. And so I do have this definition from UiPath, which along with Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism are third-party providers that have this software, but there are last time I checked, over 50 that actually have software that you can use for RPA to program your bots. And I will have a link in the description to it's a blog post about 7 ways to tell, 7 ways to pick your vendor and your RPA software. And the great thing about it is they do list all of the software out there and they rate them. So I'll leave that in the description. But in any event, you've got RPA, let's say you have that software, or maybe you don't have that software, but you have employees that are ready for more value-added tasks. This can be a great thing or a great upskill for an existing employee that is, again, ready for more value-added tasks, and they can help your team out by looking at all of those manual processes. And I know you still have manual processes that are still being done, and see if they can be automated using RPA. And it doesn't even have to be the full process end to end. It could just be parts of a process that can help you out as well. All right, so let's specifically now talk about one thing that RPA can do to deter occupational fraud. And so if anyone has been around me anytime, for any time, watching my webinars, listen to my podcast, read my blog posts. This was actually the first blog post I ever sent out or I ever created back in October of 2018. And it was all about sending notifications of change to vendors. And this is the same way that if you make a change to your Hulu, Netflix, Amazon account or registration or profile, they'll send you a notification and say, hey, a change was made. And if you didn't initiate the change, either they'll tell you to change your passwords or to contact them. And you can do the same thing with your vendors for changes on the vendor record. And so why notifications to vendors, right? Really is a fraud prevention task. I call it internal control because it does alert the vendors to changes to their vendor record, and you give them your contact instructions in case they did not initiate the change. Now, what will hopefully happen is they'll be, reading their emails, and let's say you had a bank change and you sent that notification out and they did not initiate the change. This notification lets them know way ahead of time, before they would have missed that payment, right? When the payment's due or when they check their statements, which can be far in the future and far beyond your recovery period. So this gives them the opportunity to catch that the change was fraudulent, and may even give them the opportunity or give you the opportunity to be notified back before that payment or those invoices even get into the pay file, right? You may not even send it out the door because the vendor may contact you in time. So how does this help occupational fraud? Well, not only does it contact the vendors to let them know something has changed, giving them the opportunity to reach back out to you if they didn't initiate the change, but it also deters internal team members from changing vendor banking or even a remittance address right before a big payment is going to be made. And then right after that pay file is generated, then changing that information back because they know that a notification is going to go out to the vendor. Now you might say, well, what if they change the email address that is going to? Well, part of the configuration or the building of that bot to send the notification can include the trigger of key changes on the vendor file or vendor record, and that can be banking. I do also recommend it's a remittance address as well, because you guys know you're still making check payments, and fraudsters and internal employees are trying to get those check payments to go to their addresses too. So they're not out of the woods. So banking information, check remittance addresses for check payments, and then also email addresses. So if an internal employee wants to try to get ahead of that control that you put in place, then the email address needs to be triggered as well. And that's a big thing, because if you do make a change on a vendor record and the vendor is notified of that change, if one of the changes is the email address, then you need to make sure that the bot is programmed to send the notification to the old email address. All right, so you can program the bot to pull reports and then to send an email to a generic email address, and program it to run at least daily. And if some parts of that process just will not work based on your systems, you can automate certain parts of it. At the very least, you can generate a automate the generating of that report and then send that report to someone on the team who can then send those notifications out. All right, so if you would like more information on how to improve your vendor process, please go to my website at deborarrichardson.com for free tools and resources to avoid fraud, regulatory fines, and just overall bad vendor data. So good luck, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified next Tuesday for the next Vendor Master File tip of the week.